Hi, I'm Dan, this is At Midlife Crisis Motorcyclist, and this is the Honda CB500 Hornet, and my attempt to make an interesting video about what, on the face of it, looks like a bit of a boring bike. I say that because for all the kind of Hornet branding and all that kind of thing, this is essentially your standard 500cc Honda, and one with a pretty generic modern parallel twin engine at its heart. Suffice to say, I've ridden much more exciting looking bikes on the channel thus far. But then that's kind of part of the challenge, isn't it? Because YouTube rewards the clicks, the likes and the subs and all that kind of thing. So to get all that, the temptation is to just fixate on the sexier bikes, perhaps to the detriment of more ordinary ones like this. But is there anything to say about a bike like this? Well, I think there absolutely is, because if you look at it this way, motorcycling desperately needs to attract a broader demographic of riders, not just kind of middle-aged, midlife crisis riders like myself, and it needs to offer products to those who are riding on, you know, a restricted A2 license, or for whom a big bike just looks prohibitively expensive to buy or insure. Honda also would like to create a product here with a baby Hornet that, for people who maybe when are in a position to upgrade something a little scarier, like the CB500 Hornet I was riding on a channel recently, they can stay within the Honda family. But do they really share anything in common whatsoever, or is this CB500 just trading on the name? Well, something to explore in due course, isn't it? But let's just have a look at what we've got here. So the CB500 Hornet launched in, I think, November 2023. It costs £6,199 and it's based around a 471cc, 180 degree firing order parallel twin with 47 horsepower and 43 newton meters of torque. That puts it kind of towards the top of the class in terms of A2 restricted bikes. It's probably one of the sportier choices a rookie rider could go for, unless of course you go the other way and buy a big bike and run it in restricted A2 license form. Which is the better option? I don't know, something to ponder there, isn't it? But let's just have a bit of a closer look at the bike itself. Now, if you're looking at this and thinking, you know what, that looks just like a CB500F with some Hornet stickers on. Well, you'd be right, and to be fair, Honda is completely open about the fact that this is based on a model dating back to 2019. For the transition to CB500 Hornet, they based it on the 2022 version of the CB500F, but it's got the same frame, the same engine, the same bits, so it uses the same Showa separate function big piston forks. It's got the same twin front discs with radially mounted Nissan calipers, and that gives it a kind of a big bike vibe compared with some of the equivalent bikes in the market which use kind of conventional forks and single brakes, things like the Kawasaki Z500 and alternatives like that. So Honda's definitely gunning for the kind of my first big bike vibe with this baby Hornet. What other changes are there over that CB500F? Well, they've added a 5-inch TFT screen at the front here. That's fully configurable. You can connect it to the Honda RoadSync app if you want. We've also got Honda selectable torque control, traction control, which on a winter's day like this might be quite useful. The bike you see here has the £455 comfort pack, which includes heated grips. Again, I think I'll be quite glad of those today. A phone charging port under the seat, and then a centre stand. Now, the latter might not be the sexiest addition for a kind of sporty looking bike like this, but in terms of kind of everyday maintenance like oiling the chain, it's an absolute godsend. And that's kind of it really. It's a combination of your kind of traditional sensible pants Honda and the more exciting image of the Hornet family. Best of both worlds? Well, let's go and find out. So, CB500 Hornet, are you worthy of the name? Well, time to find out. And as you can see, it's kind of an interesting day to be out on a motorbike, but kind of a beautiful one as it goes, and hopefully the roads remain clear of snow. And I can stay upright. And what about this bike? Well, it's interesting because my kind of motorcycling journey is kind of, it's been on Hondas, or it started out on Hondas, because the first geared bike I rode was a 125, a CB125R. I did all my tests on the Hornet 750. This bike's big brother. So in some sense, this is kind of the missing link, isn't it, between that 125 and the 750, and in terms of the kind of buying journey you might go on as a beginner rider. But in terms of reference points in the bikes that I've ridden so far, weirdly, the one that springs to mind is the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 I was riding probably about this time last year, in fact, which sounds crazy, but bear with me, because although it's obviously a very different kind of bike, the Enfield is also a parallel twin, 47 horsepower, so you know, also a kind of potential my first big bike type thing. But there kind of the similarities really do stop, because this is a much more modern bike in terms of the engine and everything really, and it's got, you know, little things like decent suspension and brakes that work, tyres that don't slither around when it's greasy on the road like this. So very, very different riding experience from that Royal Enfield. So we'll park that comparison and just take a look at the bike that we've actually got. So let's have a look at that engine, which is, although it's a parallel twin and a modern parallel twin, and you know, that's kind of the engine of our time, isn't it? It's interesting, I think this is the first 180 firing order parallel twin I've ridden. I think all the others have been 270s. So it seems to have a slightly different character. It's a little bit more throbby than those 270s, and it's a little bit ruder sounding than I expected, to be honest. You know, it's got quite a bassy tone, it's quite loud, and it's got a kind of cheeky little bangs and pops on the overrun sometimes, so yeah, it's got a bit more attitude than I expected. In terms of performance, obviously it's down a little bit on the, well, quite a lot, well, to about half in fact on the 750 that I know so well, so you do feel that, but there's a trade-off there, because there's less power. I actually find the throttle's a little bit less snatchy. Now, I was pretty new when I was riding the 750, so didn't have much to compare it with, but it felt like the throttle on that bike was a bit kind of binary. It was just kind of very on-off. Particularly on the overrun, you know, when you came off the throttle, the bike would kind of feel like it was going to throw you over the bars, but this engine's smoother in that sense. Again, less power, so it's going to be less urgent in its delivery, isn't it? So, but it's got enough to be going on with. It's interesting, it's quite torquey, low in the revs, but there's a definite kick about 4,000 RPM where there's a kind of cam shift or something, so, and it kind of perks up a bit after that. It, you know, it only has a limited amount of get-go at the top end, because it, you know, it's only a 47 horsepower bike at the end of the day, but yeah, the engine is surprisingly engaging, and when you combine it with a decent chassis, you know, those Showa forks are pretty much standard kit on all mid-range bikes these days, aren't they? So, but they're proven, they're non-adjustable, they do the job, and that Pro-Link back end feels pretty plush as well, so there's a nice balance between sort of sportiness and comfort. These roads are a good test of suspension, and
Yeah, that's a big difference. I said I wasn't going to compare with the Royal Enfield, but here comes another one. You know, you feel so much more confident when you've got good suspension under you, because the contact patch, the tyre is more constant, contact pressure I should say, is more constant, so that gives you a much more consistent level of grip, which helps the confidence levels, as do those more powerful brakes. So when the roads are greasy like this, I'm a little bit wary of the power of those twin front discs, but they do inspire a bit of confidence. And to be honest, there's probably as much a kind of an aesthetic feature as a dynamic one, because you know, when you turn up at the Biker's Cafe on this and you've got twin front discs on the front end, it looks like a proper bike. You know, there's not that usual tell of just a single front disc that marks it out as being a smaller capacity bike, so, which sounds superficial, but these things do matter. And although it's a baby Hornet, Honda's definitely gunning for kind of big bike vibes with it. So does it feel big though? Well, I'm about 6 foot. It does feel quite small under me, I will say that much. Not kind of 125 small, but it's definitely, my legs are a little bit scrunched underneath me, so might not be kind of all day comfortable in that sense, but the plus side of that is, of course, that it feels nice and kind of checkable. So it only weighs 189 kilos, so you know, it's nice and predictable. It's very confidence inspiring, as you'd expect of a bike that's aimed at beginners, so that's good. You know, it's an easy bike to ride, it's an easy bike to dial your head into, and it's got enough the kind of big bike vibe, but it would feel a very easy transition from something like that CB125 that I started on. A very natural progression, perhaps a more natural progression than going from that to the 750 like I did. So it's kind of a logical step, isn't it? And it's just a fun bike to ride, to be honest. Sure, it's not particularly fast. You have to plan your overtakes a little bit more carefully than you would on a more powerful bike, but it's fast enough. It's got a nice sense of chuckability. And for the target audience of young riders on restricted A2 licenses, I can see how it would be really, really appealing. So yeah, there's a quick sense of the CB500 Hornet.
So there we go, quite a day to be out on a motorbike, but worth it, I think, to try and find out if this baby CB500 Hornet really is worthy of the name, and I kind of think it is. I think it's a worthy addition to the family. Now you've got a kind of sensible progression from this, you know, the kind of entry-level A2 model through to the CB750 that I know well from it having been my first big bike that I rode after passing my test, then all the way through to the full-on CB1000, which is, you know, a very serious bike, but you can see the kind of the link between them all. You know, the styling is all kind of consistent through them all. You've got this modern look, you've got that nice combination of sort of sporty handling but not too sporty. It's kind of combines that with a bit of kind of all-day comfort. You've got the tech that modern riders crave in terms of the screen and the connectivity. Traction control is a worthy addition of the CB500F that this is based on. And I think, yeah, you can see a common thread through all the bikes, which means as your skills and your budget improves or whatever, you can stay within the Hornet family and still enjoy the same familiarity, just at a different speed, shall we say. I also like features like the twin front disc as well. Like I was saying, you know, that it sounds a small thing, but you know, when you're mixing it with all the big boys on their grown-up bikes, you know, you can pull up alongside them and not look like you're just riding a 125 or something like that. So appreciate details like that. And it's a fun bike to ride as well, and it kind of points to an encouraging bigger picture in terms of the range of bikes that you can now ride on an A2 licence, whether they're bikes like this built to the limit or the increasing number of big bikes that you can restrict down to the 47 horsepower, up to and including even the new Ducati Panigale V2, which is obviously still an expensive bike to buy, but you can now ride one on an A2 licence. So good news for younger riders, and it's nice to see an increasing choice of bikes at this end of the market. Anyway, I hope I managed to make the video interesting. If you enjoyed it, please hit like. If you're not subscribed already, please do so. It'd be great to have you along for the ride. And in the meantime, I'll say goodbye, thanks for watching, and ride safe.